Alina stared at the cracked ceiling of their tiny one-room apartment as her baby brother coughed in the corner. The ceiling fan creaked with every slow rotation, sounding like a countdown to their destruction. Her mother sat silently in the corner, holding a torn letter, the notice that their house would be seized in 3 days. Her father was still in jail, falsely accused of a financial scam he didn't commit. Everything had collapsed so fast. Last month, they had a small shop. Normal life. Now, they were drowning, and no one was coming to help. Alina had knocked on every door in the city, banks, neighbors, old friends, but everyone closed the door on a girl with no name, no money, and no power. She was only 21, but her eyes had already seen more than most do in a lifetime. Her hands trembled as she washed plates in a cheap cafe at night, and every coin she earned felt like an insult to her helplessness. She wanted to scream, to cry, but her strength had dried up like their kitchen tap. Then came the call. It wasn't a number she recognized, but something about the way the man said her name made her freeze. Alina. "I can get your father out," he said calmly, "but there's a condition." Back of a black car, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. The driver didn't speak a word. The streets grew darker, quieter, until they reached a mansion buried in the forest. Far from the world, far from hope. The mansion gates opened like the mouth of a beast, and inside stood the man who had made the call. He was tall, dressed in all black, and his face was unreadable. Zayan. That's all she knew. A name and a promise. He didn't ask her how. She was. He didn't greet her. He simply said, "The papers are ready. You marry me tonight. In return, your father walks free tomorrow." Alina blinked. "Why, me?" she asked in a whisper. Zayan didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a pen. "It's your choice, but once you sign, there's no going back." Her hands trembled as she stared at the marriage contract. Her mother's hollow eyes flashed in her mind, her baby brother's wheezing breath, her father's broken voice from the jail call. She signed. No wedding dress, no ceremony, no music, just her trembling heart, a cold pen, and a stranger watching her like a piece of property. "Take her to the East Wing," Zayan told his guard. "Tell her the rules." And just like that, Alina walked into her new life, a prisoner in a golden cage, married to a man she didn't know, in a house that felt cursed, with no phone, no freedom, no love. Only one rule echoed in her mind, spoken by the maid who shut the bedroom door behind her. Obey the master of the house, or suffer the fate of the last wife. Alina sat on the edge of the luxurious bed, numb, staring. At her wedding ring, she had saved her family. But who was going to save her? The first night in the mansion felt like being buried alive in velvet. The room was massive, colder than it looked, with walls so high they echoed back her own breath. Alina sat stiffly. On the edge of the bed, her fingers still clenched from signing the contract. The heavy diamond ring on her finger felt more like a shackle than a symbol of marriage. The silence was unbearable. No footsteps, no voices, just the soft tick of a golden clock on the wall. It was as if the mansion itself was holding its breath, watching her. The door creaked open. A tall, middle-aged woman stepped in, dressed in black and white, her hair tied tightly back. "I'm Mira, head of the staff," she said bluntly. "Follow me. It's time you learn the rules of the house." Without waiting for a reply, Mira turned and walked down the hallway, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Alina followed quietly, glancing around. Every wall was lined with portraits, none smiling. Chandeliers hung like frozen fire above her head. Every corner was too perfect, too lifeless. They stopped in front of a tall iron door at the end of the east wing. Mira didn't open it. She simply looked at Alina and said, This part of the mansion is off limits. If you're caught trying to enter, you'll be removed from this house immediately. And no, I won't explain why. Just obey." Alina nodded slowly. She didn't trust this place, but something about that door. It pulled at her, like a whisper in the dark. Mira led her to the kitchen next. Dozens of servants worked quietly, avoiding Alina's eyes. It was clear, she wasn't one of them, but she wasn't family either. She was something in between, something unnatural. "You will eat here. You are not to leave the mansion. No guests, no phone, no social media. You are now Mrs. Zion Almas, and your reputation will be protected at all costs," Mira recited as if reading from a script. Alina finally asked, "Where is he?" "Mr. Zion?" Mira raised an eyebrow. "He stays in the West Wing. You are not to disturb him unless summoned." Alina's heart dropped. "Summoned?" Mira continued. "You will meet him in the main hall at 7 p.m. daily. Until then, you will stay in your room or walk the East Garden. Do not ask questions. Do not touch locked doors. Do not attempt to leave." It was no longer a marriage. It was a set of instructions. A manual to live by. Later that night, the 7 p.m. chime echoed through the mansion. The main hall lit up with low golden light. Alina walked in slowly, her silk gown brushing against the cold marble. At the far end, Zayan sat in a tall armchair reading. He didn't look up. Alina stood quietly for minutes. Finally, he spoke without lifting his head. "Your father is free. The charges are gone." She inhaled sharply, eyes stinging. "Thank you." "I didn't do it for gratitude," Zayan replied coldly, closing the book. "You agreed to 6 months. In this house you live by my rules. Disobey once, and you go back to the streets. With nothing." Alina clenched her jaw, anger swirling beneath her fear. "Why me?" she asked again. Zayan finally looked at her, dark eyes, unreadable. "Because you were desperate, and I needed someone replaceable." He stood up and walked past her, not even sparing a second glance. The silence returned. But this time, it screamed. Back in her room, Alina broke down for the first time. Tears ran freely as she buried her face in her hands. She had signed away her freedom, but she wasn't going to break. Not yet. She lay on the bed later that night, staring at the ceiling. The golden cage was beautiful, yes, but it was still a cage, and every cage has a key. Days passed in the mansion like seasons that refused to change. Alina woke up, walked the garden in silence, and stood like a shadow in the grand hall every evening at 7, only to be greeted by silence or cold commands. Zayan remained a mystery, distant, unreadable, and buried in his own silence. He never yelled, never raised a hand, yet his presence weighed heavier than anger. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't kind. It was like living with a ghost in a palace. He spoke only when necessary, looked through her instead of at her, and disappeared into the West Wing every night without another word. The house was alive with secrets, and she could feel them breathing through the walls. The forbidden door haunted her. It stood tall at the end of the east corridor, locked and guarded by silence. Servants never walked near it. Even Mira, who acted like she feared nothing, would stiffen slightly when she passed by. Alina asked about it once, just once, and the maid who was folding her bedsheet that morning went pale and quickly changed the topic. That same night, she found that maid had been transferred to another part of the mansion, never to be seen again. Curiosity grew like a thorn in her chest. She began noticing things, faint piano music echoing from nowhere, shadows that didn't belong, and the sudden way chandeliers flickered when no one moved. One evening, as she walked alone in the hallway after dinner, she passed the forbidden door and felt something shift, A faint breeze, though no windows were open. And then she heard it. A whisper. A woman's voice. Faint, like wind brushing. Past silk saying her name. She froze, her heart hammering. "Alina!" It breathed again, barely audible. She spun around. No one. Her skin prickled. She tried the handle out of impulse. It didn't budge. Locked, cold, dead. She returned to her room shaken. That night, she couldn't sleep. Memories of her father's pale face in prison flashed in her mind. She had done everything to save her family, but what if she had walked into something far darker? Her dreams that night were filled with broken mirrors, bleeding chandeliers, and Zayan standing over a grave that had her name etched on it. The next morning, she awoke to a note on her bedside table. No name, no signature. Just 3 words written in perfect black ink. "Don't trust him." Her stomach flipped. She rushed to find Mira, but the headmaid was nowhere in sight. No staff admitted to entering her room. It was as if the note had appeared out of thin air. That evening at 7 p.m., Zayan didn't show up in the hall. Alina waited. Minutes stretched into an hour. No one came. A strange unease settled in her chest. She went back to her room, but as she passed the corridor once more, she saw it. The forbidden door slightly open. It was the first time. Her breath caught. Her instincts screamed no, but something stronger pulled her forward. She pushed it open, slowly, the ancient hinges groaning in protest. The room was dark, dust dancing in the thin rays of sunset light. And then she saw it. Photos. Dozens of them, framed, scattered, some torn. All of the same woman. Beautiful, graceful, with sad eyes. One picture had a date, 5 years ago. The woman looked like her, not exactly, but eerily close, and in each photo beside the woman was Zayan. But he was different, smiling, holding her, touching her like she was his whole world. Alina felt cold. There was a dresser in the corner. On it, a wedding ring, dusty, untouched, still shining, and next to it, a small jewelry box. She opened it. Inside was a bracelet with the name Aliyah engraved on it. The name burned into her mind. That night, Alina sat by her window, staring out into the darkness. Her mind was loud with questions. Who was Aliyah? Why did Zayan marry someone who resembled her? What happened to her? When she confronted Mira, the next morning the woman was unusually silent. Finally, she said, she was his wife. She died. In this very mansion. Her voice cracked slightly, eyes darting away. Don't ask more. Just stay safe. Then she walked away, leaving Alina more broken than before. That night, Alina didn't go to the main hall. She waited for Zayan in the corridor outside. The forbidden room. When he finally appeared, his face turned stone cold. "Who let you in there?" he asked, not shouting, but his voice colder than ice. "I did," she replied. "What happened to her, Zayan?" His jaw tightened. "She left me." "No," Alina whispered, stepping closer. "She died." Something in his eyes flickered. Pain, real pain, and a rage buried so deep it barely breathed. "Don't dig into graves that were meant to stay buried." Alina stared at him. "You married me because I look like her, didn't you?" He didn't deny it. Just turned and walked away, his silence screaming louder than any confession. She stood there for a long time, staring at the forbidden door now closed again. Her chest heavy, her heart spinning. She wasn't a wife. She was a replacement. But replacements, she told herself, don't stay quiet forever. After that night, the mansion changed. Or maybe it was Alina who changed. The walls that once felt cold now watched her. The chandeliers didn't just hang, they loomed. The servants whispered less, walked faster, and avoided her gaze completely. Even Mira had become quieter, her instructions reduced to nods and brief glances, and Zayan. He didn't appear in the main hall anymore. Days passed with no sign of him, but his presence lingered, in the locked doors, the hidden rooms, and in every photo of the woman Alina now couldn't forget. Aliyah. She couldn't sleep. The mansion's silence was too loud. At night, she roamed its corridors barefoot, like a ghost among ghosts. She traced her fingers along the dusty picture frames, watched the moonlight hit the marble floors, and tried to feel human again. One night, she returned to the forbidden room. It was locked again. Of course it was. But this time, someone had left something beneath the door. A torn envelope. Inside it, a flash drive. Back in her room, Alina plugged it into the only computer she was allowed to use, one strictly monitored by mansion security. But somehow, this drive bypassed everything. One video file, untitled. She clicked it. The screen flickered, then showed Aliyah. Real. Breathing. Alive. She sat in the very room Alina was in now. Same wallpaper, same windows. And she was crying, her eyes swollen, her lips trembling. "If anyone ever sees this," Aliyah whispered, "please, know that I didn't die. I was killed." Her voice cracked. "They made it look like an accident, but it wasn't. This house, it's not what it seems." Zayan changed. "After we got married, he started acting like I didn't matter. Then one day I overheard them, him and his uncle talking about the next heir, like I was just a vessel. I tried to leave." She looked into the camera. "I tried to run." The video cut off. Alina's heart pounded so loudly she thought it would break her ribs. The woman she was replacing hadn't just disappeared. She had been silenced. And if that was the plan before, could it still be the plan now? The next morning, Zayan returned. He entered the breakfast hall casually, as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't buried his past inside a golden coffin and handed Alina the same dress his dead wife once. "Or, I want to speak with you," Alina said calmly, her voice stronger than before. Zayan looked up from his coffee, surprised by her tone. "I didn't know we were friends." "We're not," she replied. "But I deserve answers." Zayan studied her for a long second, then gestured to the garden. "Walk with me." The garden was beautiful, the only part of the mansion that felt alive. Roses bloomed in silent pride, the wind carrying the scent of something sweeter than truth. As they walked, Alina asked the question that had burned through her chest for days. "Did you love her?" Zayan paused near a fountain, watching the water ripple. "I thought I did, until she betrayed me." "Betrayed you?" Alina's brows furrowed. "She tried to run," he said, his voice hollow. "She didn't believe in what we built. She thought she could just walk away." Alina stepped closer. Or maybe she realized she wasn't safe. Zayan's eyes snapped to hers. Sharp. Cold. "What did you see, Alina?" She didn't flinch. Enough. There was a long silence between them. The kind that only exists when one person is lying and the other knows the truth. Zayan exhaled slowly, like someone tired of hiding. "This house," he said softly, "was built on trust. But trust is fragile. I gave it once. I won't give it again." Alina turned to him. "Then why marry me? Why choose me?" He looked at her, and for a moment, just a flicker, she saw it. Not anger, not obsession, but loneliness. Deep, dangerous loneliness. "Because you look like her," he said. She already knew that, but hearing it aloud felt like being slapped. "And what happens when I stop looking like her?" she asked bitterly. Zayan didn't answer. That night, she didn't cry. She packed a small bag. She'd had enough. She wasn't going to wait for her name to be written on another gravestone. But as she opened her room door to leave, she found Mira standing there, face pale. "You can't run," Mira whispered. "They'll find you." Alina's voice cracked, but she stayed firm. "Then help me." Mira hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded. "There's a way." Alina's heart beat faster. "But it comes with a price," Mira said. "I've already paid too much," Alina whispered. "What's one more thing?" The storm rolled in quietly that night, thunder rumbling somewhere far, like a warning whispered too late. Alina stood by her window, watching the wind bend, the trees. But inside her heart, a different kind of storm had begun, one that wouldn't go away until she tore the truth out from behind every locked door. Mira had promised her a way out, but Alina knew better than to trust anyone fully now, not even the woman who had helped her survive. Not in this house. Not anymore. They met in the servants' quarters, past midnight. Mira had snuck her in through the east corridor, past the shadowed staircases and sleeping halls. The walls here were rougher, colder, untouched by gold or glamour, hidden from the glitter of the rest of the mansion. "There's a room in the basement," Mira whispered. "Records, photos, documents, everything they tried to erase." "Who's they?" Alina asked. Mira's eyes flinched. "Zion's uncle, his mother, and sometimes Zion himself." Alina's breath caught. "You mean he knew?" Mira didn't answer. She just pushed a loose tile in the wall, and a thin door cracked open with a creak that felt centuries old. Inside was darkness, thick, untouched. Mira handed her a flashlight. "You have 10 minutes. After that, the cameras will switch back on." Alina entered, her heart thundering in her chest. The air smelled of damp wood and dust, like forgotten sins. The room was lined with shelves, overflowing with old files and photographs. She flipped through them quickly, her eyes darting over names, dates, birth certificates. Some real, some forged. Then she found it, a file marked Aaliyah. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Photos of bruises, hospital reports, one psychiatrist's note. Subject displays signs of severe emotional abuse. Tears stung her eyes. She had known, deep down, but seeing it in black and white, the truth was no longer a suspicion. It was a wound that bled from the page. One paper fell from the folder, a marriage contract. Her name wasn't on it, but Aaliyah's was, and on the back, scribbled in panicked handwriting, "If I die, it wasn't an accident. Tell my sister." Alina's eyes widened. Sister? She shoved the file into her coat and ran out, barely making it before the camera lights flickered on. Mira guided her back quietly, but just before they parted, the older woman whispered something she hadn't before. "Zion used to be good," she said softly, "but power, grief, guilt, they change a man. Be careful, Alina. You're not just fighting him. You're fighting a house built on shadows." The next morning, the sun returned, but it couldn't chase away the storm now raging inside her. Alina dressed in silence, her mind spinning. There was no time left for fear. It was time to move. She found Zion in the West Garden that evening. For once, he wasn't surrounded by guards or shadows. Just him, standing beneath a tree, a single black rose in his hand. He didn't look up when she approached. He just said, "Why do you keep looking for what's buried?" "Because I don't want to end up beneath it," Alina said. He glanced at her, his face unreadable. "You think I'm a monster." "I don't think," she said calmly. "I know." A flicker of pain passed through his eyes, but only for a second. "You weren't supposed to matter," he said. "You were just a contract, a way to shut them up, To get them off my back. I never asked you to feel. But you needed me to pretend, she whispered. To wear her dresses, eat her meals, sleep in her bed. What were you doing, Zayan? Rewriting history? He turned away. You sound just like her. Alina took a deep breath. Maybe that's why you married me. But I'm not her, and I won't die like she did. She left before he could speak, her hands shaking, not from fear anymore, but from the weight of everything she now knew. The mansion had buried too many truths, but not this time. Not her. That night, she prepared her escape. The documents were copied, the file hidden in a place even Mira didn't know. And as she zipped up her small travel bag, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. No longer scared, no longer fragile. She had entered this house as a girl desperate to save her family. Now she was a woman ready to burn it down, brick by golden brick. The plan was simple, too simple. Leave the mansion at midnight, when the outer cameras were switched off for maintenance, something Mira had secretly arranged. The chauffeur she trusted was paid off. The file with evidence against Zayan's family was secured in a false bottom bag. The gate key was already in her coat. Everything was ready. And yet, something inside Alina twisted painfully as the clock struck midnight. She glanced around her room one last time. The dresses, the mirror, the untouched perfumes, all gifts meant to soften a cage. The walls that once watched her now felt like they were whispering warnings. Still, she tightened her coat, grabbed her bag, and stepped out. The hallway was silent. No guards, no Mira, no sound. She reached the east corridor and descended the narrow servants' staircase. Her breath was shallow, every step echoing louder than it should. At the side exit, a black car waited. The driver didn't turn around, just opened the door for her. Freedom was just inches away. But as she stepped into the car, a familiar voice sliced through the darkness like a blade. Going somewhere? Alina froze. Zayan stood behind her, his figure barely lit by the dim porch lights, but his voice was unmistakable. Calm, cold, lethal. The driver bolted instantly, disappearing into the night without a word. Coward. Alina stepped back, heart pounding. You can't keep me here. Zayan didn't flinch. He stepped closer, eyes narrowed. You thought I wouldn't know? Every inch of this house breathes for me. You don't escape my world, Alina. You just get replaced. Her jaw clenched. Like you replaced your grief with me? That hit something. His expression cracked for a fraction of a second. You don't understand. I understand everything, she cut in. You were in love with her, and when she saw through your empire of control, you broke her. And now you're trying to rewrite your guilt with me. Zayan's eyes darkened. Aliyah betrayed me. She wanted to be free. She was mine, he snapped, voice rising for the first time, the mask slipping. She made promises, and she ran, and when I tried to stop her, he stopped. Alina stepped closer. You pushed her, didn't you? Silence. Zayan looked away, his voice suddenly low, almost broken. It was an accident. But you let the world believe she died naturally, Alina whispered. You buried the truth along with her. He said nothing, just stared at the cold ground like it held the answers to everything he lost. And then he looked up, that dangerous calm returning to his face. You're not leaving. Alina's fingers tightened around the bag. Try to stop me and I'll release everything I know. The documents, the footage, the reports, they're not just here. They're already copied, already gone. That rattled him. He stepped back slightly, eyes flickering with calculation. You really think you'll survive once my family knows what you've done? I'm not afraid of them, she said. I was afraid of you, not anymore. Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows. Mira. But something was wrong. Her eyes were distant, cold. Alina's breath caught. "Mira?" "I'm sorry," Mira said softly. "They offered me my son's life back." Before Alina could process what that meant, two masked men grabbed her from behind, her bag yanked from her hands. She screamed, fought, bit, but their grip was iron. Zion didn't move. He watched, until she locked eyes with him. Not in fear, but in hatred. That gaze pierced deeper than any blade. "Whatever you do to me, she hissed. "You'll never erase what you've done." He flinched, and for the first time since she met him, Zion looked afraid. They dragged her back inside the mansion as thunder cracked overhead and the rain began to pour. Loud, furious, like the sky itself was trying to drown the sins buried beneath that cursed roof. She was thrown into the locked wing, the one they said was off limits. The same place Aaliyah once walked, once begged, once died. Now it was Alina's prison, and the countdown had just begun. The room they threw her into wasn't just a prison, it was a grave dressed in velvet. The walls were padded, the windows sealed with iron bars, and the only light came from a flickering lamp above that buzzed like an insect with a dying heartbeat. There was no bed, no mirror, no comfort. Just silence, thick and mocking. Alina sat on the cold floor, her hands still shaking from the struggle, her lip cut, her voice hoarse from screaming. But inside her, something had shifted. Not just fear, fury. A fire that came from knowing she had touched the truth, and now they were trying to silence her just like they did to Aaliyah. But she wouldn't die quietly. Not like this. Not for them. Days passed. Or maybe nights. Time twisted in that room. No clocks, no voices, only the sound of her own breathing and the occasional echo of footsteps beyond the door. They sent in food twice a day, slipped through a small slot. No one spoke. No one looked at her. Except once. Zion. He entered on. The third day, standing at the doorway in silence like a shadow bleeding into the room. He didn't speak, just stared at her with hollow eyes. And for the first time, Alina didn't look away. "What do you see when you look at me?" she asked him, her voice rough. "Her ghost? Or your guilt?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and left, closing the door quietly behind him. But she had seen it, that flicker of pain, that fracture behind his calm. He wasn't as untouchable as he pretended to be, and that was her opening. On the fifth night, the lock clicked. Not from the outside, but from within. A small panel slid back near the bottom of the wall, and a familiar hand reached through, trembling but brave. "Mira." "I can't undo what I did," she whispered, "but I can help now. Hurry." Alina crawled through the hidden tunnel, without hesitation. Her body ached, her mind burned, but her will was sharper than ever. The passage was narrow, suffocating, and led beneath the house, through darkness that stank of mold and forgotten things. Mira guided her to a secret chamber beneath the east wing, one even Zayan didn't know about. "Aaliyah came here too," Mira confessed. She kept her backup drives here, documents, recordings. She knew she didn't have time. Alina's eyes scanned the dusty boxes, the old recorder still hidden beneath a broken vase. She played the last message Aaliyah ever recorded. "To whoever finds this, if he's still alive, he'll try to bury you like he buried me. Don't let him. I loved him once. But love without freedom is a coffin. Save yourself." Alina's throat tightened. She copied everything onto her hidden flash drive, the one Zion never found during the capture. She tucked it inside the heel of her boot, just like she'd planned before. This time, she wouldn't just run. She would expose everything. But fate always complicates escape. Just as she emerged from the chamber into the outer garden, footsteps echoed across the wet stone path. Guards. Flashlights. Mira froze. "Go," she whispered. "I'll distract them." And before Alina could protest, Mira stepped into the open, drawing them away with a scream. Alina ran, heart racing, legs barely holding. She reached the far end of the property, the place where the security blind spot existed, a detail she'd memorized long ago. Just as she climbed the outer wall, a voice rang out behind her. "Alina!" Zayan's voice, loud, desperate, not in command, in fear. She turned halfway, her fingers clinging to the stone wall, breath fogging in the cold night. He stood alone, no guards, rain pouring over his face like penance. "Please," he said, his voice cracking. "Don't go." For a moment, she saw the man beneath the monster, broken, twisted by grief, but human. And then she remembered Alia's bruises, her whisper, "Don't let him win." Alina looked him in the eyes, her voice steady. "You don't own me, not anymore." And with that, she dropped down the other side of the wall, disappearing into the darkness. The world outside was cold, loud, alive, and terrifying. But it was freedom. For the first time in months, Alina breathed air that wasn't poisoned by fear. She didn't stop running until she reached the safe house, a friend of her father's, someone who owed her mother a debt. The moment she plugged the flash drive into his laptop and played Alia's final confession, the man went pale. This will destroy them all," he whispered. "Good," Alina replied. "Let it." 3 weeks later, the world knew everything. The news broke like thunder across social media and headlines. Billionaire's dark empire exposed. By his own wife. Videos of Alia's recordings, hospital files, financial cover-ups, secret deals. Everything Alina had collected became fire, and the mansion that once held her captive turned to ash in the eyes of the world. Zayan's company stocks plummeted, board members resigned, investigations launched, and the once untouchable name, Alma's, became a symbol of shame. But none of that compared to the storm inside the man himself. Zayan hadn't spoken publicly. He hadn't appeared. No one knew where he was. He simply vanished. Alina, meanwhile, didn't celebrate. There was no victory dance, no revenge, party, just silence. She stood at her mother's grave, under the soft drizzle of an early spring morning, clutching the locket Alia had once worn. One Mira had slipped into her hand before disappearing forever. Her baby brother held her other hand, unaware of the war she had survived. "It's over now," she whispered to the wind. But even as she said it, she knew. Some wars never end. They just become part of you. A week later, she received a letter, no name, no return address, just a plain envelope left at the safe house door. Inside, a single sheet of paper with 8 words handwritten in familiar ink. "I never knew how to love right." Alina stared at it for a long time, her heart heavy. Not with forgiveness, but with finality. That was all he had left. A confession too late, from a man who lost everything. She burned the letter without a word. Months passed. Life slowly returned. Alina enrolled in business school with the help of Alia's hidden savings. She studied, worked, grew. She began consulting for women-owned startups, helping others rise from stories that sounded all too familiar. Women who had been silenced, caged, forgotten. And every time she stood in front of a crowd, sharing her truth, her voice didn't shake anymore. It rose, strong, unapologetic. One day, while giving a talk in a quiet university hall, a young girl asked her, "Do you still believe in love?" Alina smiled softly, thoughtfully. "Yes," she said, "but only the kind that sets you free." That night, she sat by her window, sipping tea, her brother asleep inside, the city lights humming softly in the distance. She looked at the stars and remembered the girl who once signed a contract with a stranger to save her family and became a prisoner in his mansion. She closed her eyes and whispered to the wind, "I was never the prisoner. I was the storm." And that was the story of a girl who walked into a stranger's mansion with nothing but desperation, and walked out with power, purpose, and peace. She didn't need a prince. She didn't need saving. She became her own hero. Because sometimes life doesn't give you wings. It gives you fire. And you learn how to burn the cage you were kept in. If you felt her pain, if you lived her journey, drop it in the comments and tell us which moment broke you the most. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that will grip your heart and stay with your soul. New story dropping soon. And trust us, you're not ready for this one. See you next time.